meeting to order. This is Rob Harris, and Brandon is going to lead us in the pledge to our flag.
All flags, please.
Thank you, Brandon. Roll call, please.
Director McLaren?
Here.
Director Hernandez?
Here.
Director Calandri?
Here.
Director Urosic?
Here.
Director Paris?
Here.
Angel Fitzpatrick?
Here.
Urban Wells?
Here.
And Craig Partridge?
Here.
All present.
Arden, turn your speaker up.
Oh,
All right.
okay. Can you hear me okay?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, we're on adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Kathy.
Second.
Second by Brandon. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We're on public comments on non-agenda items. Public comments on non-agenda items. Please come up. And welcome to our Watermaster meeting. I don't think I've seen you here before. I've seen you other places. And could you just announce your name, and then you have 3 minutes or as long as you want.
My name is Lisa Stoner. We live on 2.5 acres on 70th Street East in the Roosevelt area of unincorporated East Lancaster. We are small pumpers under the jurisdiction of this board. I would like to see if you will address the rumors that we're hearing about the Rancho Sierra Golf Course on 60th Street East and Avenue F8. I have 2 questions. One, I'm hearing that the Watermaster is foreclosing on the golf course property. What does that mean in the terms of the Watermaster? I don't understand how that property could be foreclosed on. Can somebody help me with that?
Craig, I don't know how much we can do out of closed session, but do you want to address that?
Just explain some of the basics that are public record. The Watermaster has a judgment against Rancho Sierra Properties for a certain sum of money. And one of the remedies the judgment the creditor has is to initiate a foreclosure sale on the property and have it be bidded on in order to meet the debt obligation of Rancho Sierra Properties to the Watermaster. So that's the background. That process has not been initiated. I don't know what you're hearing about where it is, but it's not formally been commenced at all.
I didn't understand how that a foreclosure to me means the Watermaster is going to seize the property. That's what happens if I don't pay my taxes, right? So you're talking about a sale. To pay the lien.
Go to a sale where there would be open to the public as to who bids the property at the highest rate.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Then my second question is, will you address the rumor that the city of Lancaster is purchasing the golf course for a fraction of the judgment and that the lien will be forgiven? Is that true?
And Craig, as much as you can say out of closed session?
Yeah, there is no deal with respect to purchasing the property at a sale or any otherwise. We're looking at a wide variety of options and have not focused on one that we're committed to.
I appreciate that. To me, forgiving, I don't know if it's going to happen, but forgiving alone would be a dangerous precedent for this board to set. And I just, as a water user, get your money.
I can guarantee you we're looking at every option to get the maximum amount of money for the Watermaster. So,
thank you, that's all.
And anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for being here. Any other public comments? Anybody raising their hand out in the internet world? No, we're good. Okay, we're on the consent agenda, item 6. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Brandon, second by Kathy. Is there any discussion?
It was Derek that made the motion.
Motion made by Derek, second by Kathy. Everybody's so excited about making motions. We need to know. Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion's carried unanimously. We're on advisory committee report, and Dennis, I see you're here. Welcome.
Thank you, but I'm going to hand this directly off to Dan Clifford as I wasn't able to attend the meeting last week.
Very good. Dan?
Yes, good morning, Chair Harris. We've got our summary of what I would say was a very robust conversation with respect to the various agenda items, and I think that they are adequately summarized and incorporate the comments from the members of the advisory committee. There are some specific comments related to agenda items that I can address individually when they come up within the discussion further along in the agenda. If there are any questions now, I can certainly address those. Otherwise, I think the report speaks for itself.
Great, Dan. Thank you very much. Any specific questions for Dan at this time? Hearing none, we'll move right on to item 8, consideration possible action to approve amended to the memorandum of understanding with Antelope Valley East Kern Water Agency to serve as Watermaster Administrator for a fixed term. And we're going to start with our general counsel.
Right, you turn to page 33 is a short memo. We were asked last month by the board to look into amending the memorandum of understanding with AVAC to possibly enter into a First Amendment extending the term subject, of course, to termination for cause. We've done that, we think, in the revised resolution and discussion of the matter. So certainly open to hearing comments from the board on this. It's, I think, set forward pretty clearly in the resolution and the memo. That said, last night I got, or late yesterday afternoon, received a red line of the MOU from Council for the Public Water Suppliers. And I know Mr. Lemieux is here and may have some comments on it. I don't believe you've seen it. I just saw it last night and haven't circulated it. If the board is so inclined to consider the red lines, I'd ask that you give us an opportunity to review them and have a full discussion next month.
Okay. Keith, why don't you kind of explain for us, since we haven't seen it, and
sure,
let us decide what action we can take.
Good morning, folks. So I've been asked to speak on behalf of the Public Water Suppliers Steering Committee. You'll recall at the last meeting when this topic came up, I mentioned that the Public Water Suppliers had 2 concerns that they wanted to see addressed. One was some sort of workaround for the conflict of interest issue. The second was making sure that AVAC recovers all of the costs associated with the administrative work from the parties to the judgment, so that it's not recovering them from its normal customers. We still feel that way. However, after some discussion, we had a hard time coming up with a workable, practical solution for the conflict of interest issue. So instead, we focused on the cost issue. We thought that rather than come in and simply say we still had the problem, and then block it, it would be in an effort to sort of move this along. We drafted some language that you could consider today if you wanted. What the language that we were proposing says, that we circulated to council, basically just affirms that the responsibility of AVAC to recover all of its costs. It describes with particularity examples of those costs. And then it just requires that the auditor at the end of the year, when the audit's prepared, that it just certify that the costs were all recovered. So we thought this was a way of sort of satisfying that concern while allowing this to go forward.
Could you give us, again, I haven't seen the letter yet, but for the board, because we have this for an action item, could you give us an example of some of the costs you may feel that were not being recovered? Or
I don't know that I've got an example of that happening per se, but we just wanted to make sure that that there was language that would give us satisfaction that it was happening. So I can't tell you that it hasn't happened in the past, you know, or that there was a mistake made in the past. I don't know that that's true.
Okay, that's helpful. And then let me address, I know because I read the advisory committee and know what went on there. We have heard a lot about potential conflicts, our board. And as you are aware, we were the administrator, AVEC was, since the inception of the Watermaster, except for 1 year, which, as you know, didn't go very well. And in all that time, no member has ever raised an issue of actual or perceived conflict. We have talked in AVEC. I'm the chair of our Watermaster committee, which would make sense. And we've talked about potential, you know, what could some issues be? And we've listened to what the advisory committee has said and what has been said by other board members. Action we have now taken, just so the public knows, is we have removed Matt as our alternate, and I believe who's our?
Now Director Miller.
Director Miller. So Director Audrey Miller will be my alternate. And then do we have a second alternate? Drew Mercy. So it's all board members that are now alternates. We felt that was an appropriate action to take. We've also heard concerns that if there's a item that comes up that involves AVAC in closed session, that there was some concerns that all of our staff comes to closed session because minutes have to be taken and they need to be involved in that. I think it would be appropriate for me to take back to our Watermaster Board Committee on AVAC and then run it by our board, that if there's ever any perceived conflict that any board member says this could be a problem, that we would exclude our staff from the meetings, and then Craig's staff could do the minutes for that part of the meeting and then provide them to our staff. So those are the two things that I saw where we could take affirmative action to address some of the concerns I've heard. Other than that, I have never heard any other concerns about actual or perceived conflicts. So I kind of wanted to throw that out to you and just get your opinion of what you think about that.
Yeah, number one, I like it. Just for clarity, you know, we talk about conflicts of interest, which is a legal term. And when as a public entity lawyer, when I hear conflict of interest, I think of the Political Reform Act and Government Code 1090. None of that applies here.
Right.
So just, you know, and we all understand that. And I think Craig's giving you that opinion. So this is more in the realm of, we're calling it a conflict of interest, but I guess you would describe it as perceived fairness, right? Is there, we're all equals, but is there one more equal, I guess? And so that's sort of where it's coming from, not from a legal analysis.
Yeah.
I think the things that you have described are very reasonable solutions, probably better than we came up with. Maybe we should just put that in the contract amendment since you're going to do it anyway. And that way we memorialized it and made it sort of a requirement. Sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah, and
am I getting ahead of my steering committee members? Does that sound? I see you nodding.
Those are reasonable, and I think what I heard from you, Keith, was that actually the steering committee had a hard time with this aspect of it, right? And so we didn't propose, or I didn't hear that you proposed language to this effect. So I absolutely think that these recommendations could go a long way in satisfying all parties.
Okay. And I really appreciate you guys getting creative about that.
Well, and thank our general manager, Matt, for helping us come up with those type of things. I understand. And the other thing, we've had Craig over the years give us opinions on what type of conflicts we could have. And the fact that it takes 5 votes for everything kind of plays against any real conflicts occurring, because if any one of these members thought, AVAC shouldn't be doing that, they just vote no until we resolve what the issue is.
That's true, but it is important to recognize that the board is still very dependent on the staff to provide information for the vote.
Of course.
So, you don't want to minimize that.
But we also know, and from inception, you've almost been at every meeting, and most of these parties have attorneys, and the attorneys have been very meticulous to provide each party with information that I've seen over the years. So I think that is a check and balance. And we've even had a legal committee made up of a lot of the lawyers for the different parties at times. So
I would note though, Director, that when we're in closed session, our counsels are not there.
That's true.
And so I just want to make sure that we also, not to minimize the impact, I want to make sure that we're transparent as that we only have Watermaster counsel there and not individual representation from a council perspective.
But I think we've also gotten an opinion, and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, that each one of us can discuss with our individual attorneys actions in closed session.
We've not had an opinion about that.
Do we need one?
It is important for the steering committee to function that we understand what's happening in closed session.
I think we can generate something that would deal with the issue.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, certainly.
Prohibit a director from discussing a closed session item with their attorney.
Well, if this was a genuine Brown Act entity rather than a assumed Brown Act entity, you might not be able to.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So thank you for raising that. We certainly can look at it.
I don't think we're disagreeing.
No, I don't perceive that at all. I just, the reason I bring it up is I think in all my experience on all the boards that I've been on, this is the most scrutinized board by outside attorneys from the very inception of the board.
Right.
I mean, if you remember our first meetings, we had more attorneys attending than we had public.
Those were the good old days.
It's been whittled down.
Machines. I'm lonely now.
Stop that, Brandon. Okay, really good comments. I thank you for that, and I think at this point, Matt, is there any hurry to do this MOU? I think we should take back to AVAC or what I just brought up on our closed session and just get a formal consensus from them. You want to come and address that, and then I don't know what your letter says, but I think we should run that by the advisory committee and
I absolutely do, and I think it would be inappropriate for the board to vote now on something that hasn't been in the agenda packet.
Yeah, and then
you haven't seen till now.
And I don't disagree with what Keith said, maybe putting this in regarding how we would handle AVAC issues. I don't have a problem, but would you see any concerns?
No, the MOU or the amendment that's in your board packet is what was approved by the AVAC board last night.
Right.
So if we modify that, obviously we'll have to take it back to the AVAC board. So there's no rush that we need to get it approved today. I think is your question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Board okay with that? To take care of.
Would the AVAC board have an opportunity before we meet again?
Yeah.
Great. I think that would be great.
Yeah, we always try, like you guys do, we always try to have a meeting of our AVAC Watermaster committee, make recommendations to the board to be approved. And usually our board meeting is right the night before this.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Yeah. And then if Craig sees that there's anything we need to add regarding Keith's, the public water suppliers letter, we can do that. And Matt and Craig can work together on the amendment to add any language.
Sounds good.
You okay?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
We will make it, everyone. Oh, Dennis?
Got some trouble. To stir up there.
No, don't stir up more trouble, Dennis.
the MOU as is in the agenda packet
Yes.
creates one more conflict.
Yeah.
With AVAC and the board.
Yeah.
With the clause.
Actually, I'm not agreeing with you yet. I'm just listening.
In I think it's section 2 of the amendment, it talks about termination for cause. So in this case, we have AVAC on a board that has to vote unanimously to determine cause or to say that there is cause. And then AVAC is the contracting party. So I would suggest maybe that be looked at and either removed, or this would be the board's first step to supermajority voting.
I'm always in favor of supermajority voting.
That way AVAC vote wouldn't be needed for cause in termination. Just a suggestion.
Understood. Yeah,
We'll address that.
address that. Thank you.
Well, I think it's a discussion to have if we couldn't make an exception for that one contract. I don't know if that's doable.
Anyway, good comments, good discussion. Moving on. Any other discussion by the board? We're good? Yeah. Public, any discussion? Internet world, any discussion? Okay, move right on to consideration possible action to adjust May.
This is Marlene Griffin. I'm sorry, I was muted.
Oh, hi.
I'm a production right holder and in the Antelope Valley, and I just wanted to say that I think AVEC has a deep knowledge of water and the water-related matters throughout the Antelope Valley, and they're accessible, they're local, and they've done a good job so far, and I'm in favor of the MOU, and retain AVEC as an administrator for the water.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any other public comment? Okay, hearing no other public comments. We're now on item 9, consideration possible action to adjust May 2024 new production invoice. And that's going to be staff who's going to present. Angel.
Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.
There is a staff report on page 43 of your agenda packet, but just to give you a little background, in May 2024, staff invoiced new producers who failed to submit their annual production reports.
Angel, can you speak a little slower and put the mic closer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Last year in May, staff invoiced new producers who failed to submit their annual production reports per the new rule and regulation that was approved. Since then, the board has requested staff to collaborate with these producers and collect the past due production reports. So we've already approved a few invoice adjustments in the past, but today we have another one. And Holly, can you go to the next slide, please? Oh, next slide. Thank you. Today we have Rudy Naves, and he was invoiced for $673.75. We did collect past due production reports for 2020 through 2024. He did report 0 production. His well was drilled, but the house is not built at this time. Watermaster staff does recommend approving adjusting the invoice.
Angel, just to be clear, we're not adjusting the invoice. Now that we have the proper information, we're billing him the correct amount.
Yes.
We're not giving him free money.
No, but per the rules and regulations, we do have the right to invoice them because they did not submit production reports. So I would call it an adjustment.
I just wanted to make sure,
Okay.
because last time there was a bit of gray area with a few people out there. I knew what you meant.
Okay, thank you.
Good pushback, Angel. So what action do we need to take, if any? And is it an action item?
It is an action item, and staff is recommending that the board approve the adjustment of the invoice from $673.75 to $0.
I move to approve.
Motion made by Brandon, second by Carolina. I anticipated. I saw your mouth.
Can I have some comment here?
Of course.
So I guess, you know, as we're waiving these, I just remind us of the time and effort that staff's put into this and managing this, and, you know, the responsibility that other landowners and other water purveyors have paid for this versus someone that didn't follow through on what they should have done. So the burden fall upon us, which, you know, as a landowner representative, I struggle with. And, you know, I'll follow along this, but I just remind that, you know, when we think about who we represent, you know, we're asking them to carry this cost instead of this person that should have done it properly the first time.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Rob, I would just like to say that staff will send these invoices out again in May 2025 for new producers that have not submitted production reports. So I think it's maybe something we should think about, allowing these adjustments in the future.
What is your recommendation, Angel?
My recommendation would be to follow the approved rule and regulation and hold the new producers to that rule.
And that would be starting with our 2025 invoices.
Yes, that is correct.
Because we've made a extraordinary effort by staff to be fair, to let everybody know what the rules are. We talked about it in at least 3 or 4 meetings. And I think we're probably, I think that's a good recommendation.
And I think most new producers are well aware of the rule now that we went through the 2024 invoicing.
Okay, I think maybe we agendaize that for our next meeting and just take formal action on it and let everybody know this is what we're doing. Is that
Beat me to the punch. I agree. So we don't have to address this later. It's documented.
Documented that we took action and we'd be able to have public comment on it. So whoever's doing the notes for the agenda, Patty, is that you? Okay. Let's make sure that's agendized for our next meeting and we'll cover it then. And we do have a motion before us, and the motion is to approve whatever we're calling this adjustment.
The 2024 invoice adjustment.
Adjustment for which party? For the
Rudy Nava.
yes. Yeah. Okay, all in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carried unanimously. And that should bring us to item 10, the consideration and possible action on new production applications. And that is the Arden Show. Arden, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
We hear you very well. Good morning to you.
Okay. Excellent. So this application, this is our one new production application that we have for this month, and it's for 1.5 acre feet per year in the Southeast Antelope sub-area for Marcelo Luis Pequeno. And it's domestic use for a 1,200 square foot single family home and about 2,000 square feet of irrigated landscaping. So we found the potential for material injury to be negligible in this application because of the small volume of water, and it was unanimously recommended for approval by the advisory committee. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Any questions from the public? Hearing no questions. Is there a motion to approve resolution R2509?
Motion.
Motion made by Kathy.
Second.
Derek beat you, Carolina. Second by Derek. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, any public discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution R2509, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. We're on item 11, consideration possible action on new point of extraction applications. This is R2510, the Gene Wheeler Farm Sink in Arden.
Thank you. So for this application and also the next transfer applications, there was quite a bit of discussion and input from the advisory committee. So well, as I discuss these, I'm going to try to address those comments, but I certainly want to invite anybody with additional questions or comments to contribute after if I don't address everything sufficiently. So this is a new point of extraction application for Gene Wheeler Farms in the Central Antelope subarea. So Gene Wheeler Farms is an Exhibit 4 party, and they've received several pretty large one-time transfers, including last month they received about 2,100 acre-feet from Maritorina Farms. And they're planning to produce water. Well, they're currently producing water on several parcels in the Central Antelope subarea. And this is to produce from a new parcel in the Central Antelope subarea. And so this parcel was originally owned or produced on by the Derrick family, who were a defaulted party. And a review in 2018 by the Watermaster Engineering Council estimated about 400 acre-feet per year produced from this parcel. And then the land in, I think, 2020 was purchased by an Exhibit 4 party, Michael Abear, who's produced a max of 35 acre-feet per year at this parcel. And so when we look at our material injury analysis, we're really wanting to answer the question, will Gene Wheeler Farms producing 450 acre-feet per year at this parcel cause significant drawdown or subsidence? So the first thing that we look at are water levels, and we've got the hydrographs showing water levels over time included in the application. And we notice that there are 2 USGS wells that are less than a quarter mile from the parcel. So that means that there is pretty sufficient monitoring of the impacts of production at this parcel. And we see in those that there was a decline in water levels from 1997 through about 2011, and then a very slow decline through 2018, and water levels have been stable since. And we looked at the production in surrounding production wells, because this is an area where there's been a cumulative decrease over time in production. So surrounding wells have either stopped or significantly decreased production in this area for the most part. And we wanted to compare this. Well, how did water levels at the local production wells respond to after 2018, when there was no longer 400 approximately acre feet per year being produced from this parcel by the defaulted parties? And we didn't see a significant rebound, which suggests that the production of the 400 acre feet per year was unlikely to be causing significant decline in the nearby wells. One important consideration is that this is an area that has experienced historical subsidence from 1930 to 1997, so a pretty long period. Subsidence did occur about 5 feet in this area. However, if we look at the subsidence rate since the adjudication was finalized, it's been less than 1 inch since 2015. And an area to the south that's experienced a little bit more subsidence has only experienced 1.5 inches. And a lot of this likely may be cumulative, or sort of delayed subsidence from the decreases in pumping not yet kicking in. So given that overall production has decreased in nearby wells, we don't expect 450 acre feet per year of production from this well to cause subsidence. And so our finding was that the potential for material injury is minimal. So one of the comments that the advisory committee had is that we said that production would be similar to historical use. And it came to our attention that using the term historical use is not very clear, and there is a need for more quantitative clarity when saying historical use. So specifically, when we discussed historical use for this application. We're saying the known or estimated production since 2016 when the judgment was implemented, which was 400 acre feet per year. There was the comment, we said this does not represent new or increased pumping. And we wanted to clarify this was in regard to total production above the native safe yield in the basin. And that was specifically referring to material injury for safe yield. So given all that, we found the potential for material injury to be minimal, and the advisory committee recommended this application for approval with clarification of their questions and comments. So with that, are there any additional questions?
Any questions, board?
I just want a point of clarification. Just want to make sure that I hear again, Arden, that you said that the definition of historical use is the 2016 value?
It's the production that has been reported or calculated since 2016. So within that range.
Thank you, Arden.
Great.
You're welcome.
Any questions from anybody? Hearing no questions, is there a motion to approve resolution R2510?
So moved.
Moved by Kathy, second by Brandon. Any discussion? Anybody out in the internet world, Polly? Nope. All in favor of the motion to approve resolution R2510, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Now we're on item 12, consideration possible action on transfer applications. Arden.
Thank you. So we have 3 transfer applications this month, which are all to RTS Orchards. There are 75 acre feet from Richard Selleck, 75 acre feet from Steve Selleck, and 629 acre feet from Garindo Resourceful. And these are all one-time transfers. And so RTS Orchards has received quite a few one-time transfers in the last few years, and these are outlined in our letter. They also received a permanent production, transfer of 686 acre feet per year from R&M Ranch in 2023. And so originally they were acquiring one-time transfers because they had a production right of 808 acre feet per year, and we're wanting to continue their pre-ramp down production, estimating a use of 1,450 acre feet per year from the parcel. And then they received the permit production right, which put their total production rights per year at 1,494 acre feet per year, which for the most part covers their annual production. However, do want to note that in the past, their pre-ramp down production amount was roughly 1,800 acre feet per year, and they did produce that in 2017. So one of the comments and questions that came up in the advisory committee was that we had listed this application as for investment purposes for RTS Orchards, but they do list a point of extraction in the application, which is the location of their wells, which they have been producing from since 2016 and before. And a little bit of background of how that we came to use that language in the application. Also, I want to note that the discussion in the advisory committee really highlighted the need for clarification, and also made me sort of reconsider that maybe us classifying it as for investment purposes is not the best wording for this. So we had reused the language from previous RTS Orchard transfers, which had been from Garindo Resourceful and from the Celix in the past. And the way that we had come about in past years, and last year specifically, for saying investment purposes is that RTS had been acquiring the one-time transfers to supplement their production right transfer. And they had several thousand acre feet of one-time transfers. And then when they acquired the permanent production right, we asked them, what are you planning to do with the several thousand acre feet that you have in carryover water right now? And they said, we don't have a specific plan for it. And so we kind of said, okay, can we use this for investment purposes? And they agreed, yeah, sure. If we change our use or plan to use it in another area, we will let you know. And so they currently have about 7,240 acre feet available for use in 2025 from one-time transfers. And because they did not list that or include in the application that they intended to use more production per year than their past reported production of 1,800 acre feet per year. We felt that we could not do a material injury analysis for this application. However, it came to our attention with the advisory committee's comments that they do list a point of extraction. And this is a bit of a lesson for us to clarify with applicants, even repeat transfers, specifically confirm, are you planning to use what is in line with your, the past production? And recognizing that calling it for investment purposes may be too restrictive. And also the advisory committee had the comments that, once again, we used historical use. And so to clarify, it would be, there is not material injury for them producing up to 1,800 acre feet per year, which is the max that they have reported since 2016. So that being said, we did not do a material injury analysis for this application. We had listed it as investment purposes, but past applications did not identify a potential for material injury with RTS orchards using up to 1,800 acre feet per year. And so the advisory committee unanimously voted to recommend that the Watermaster approves these applications contingent on the clarification of whether the transfer is for investment purposes or is for production by RTS orchards at a specific location with no further Watermaster action. I hope that my explanation has helped clarify this a little bit more. But if it has contributed to more of the confusion, I'm happy to discuss this more and answer more questions.
Arden, I'm confused.
Yeah.
So I guess the bottom line is they listed a point of extraction, but you did not do a material injury analysis. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we can't approve it. Because if we have a point of extraction and there's no material injury analysis, that's what we're called to do through our procedures. So how do we approve it without a material injury analysis and a point of extraction? And that's an honest question. That's my interpretation on it.
That sounded like a statement instead of a question, Brendan.
Okay. How do we approve this with everything that we've done, our rules and regs and everything, when we have a listed point of extraction and no material injury?
Great question, Brandon. Arden?
Yes, so this can be approved as for investment purposes, recognizing that if RTS Orchards wants to produce more than 1,800 acre feet per year from this point of extraction, they would need a subsequent application with a material entry analysis for a new point of extraction or for a subsequent transfer.
I go back to, in its current form, we have a listed point of extraction, no material injury analysis. Craig, I would like to hear a legal perspective on this.
Yeah, I hate to say I defer to the engineer, but it's there, and if no material injury analysis is done now, and let me understand, Arden, is that correct? No MI done, no MI done on the point of extraction. Is that the situation?
There has been material injury analyses done for producing at the point of extraction up to 1,800 acre feet per year in past applications. The reason why there was not a material injury analysis done is because RTS Orchard currently has the production right to produce within their proposed annual production. And they have 7,240 acre feet of carryover water. And so if they were to, moving forward, produce a little bit more than their 1,494 acre foot production right, keeping within that, if they're producing less than the 1,800 acre feet per year, they wouldn't really be able to get to these transfers. There will still be carryover water. And so that's why we had not done a material injury for this specific transfer.
I have a question, Arden, this Rob. So I think what you're saying is RTS has 7,248 acre feet of carryover as we speak. We've approved this over the years for them to have this. Their intent is to pump at the wells that they already have for what they're doing. And that's your assumption right now. And I don't even say assumption. That's what they will do with this water unless they decide to transfer it to someone else to pump somewhere else. And at that point, a material injury analysis will be done. So it seems to me it's and the other thing, RTS, before they had this carryover, could have over pumped, and then they just have to buy transfer water, and we would never even have this discussion, likely, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so it seems if I have this all right, we're going to, if we don't approve it, we send it back to you, you do a material injury analysis, which has already been done on other situations for RTS. And all we do is burn your time, costs more money to the RTS or who's ever paying for the transfer, and we don't accomplish anything and we waste more of our time, is kind of my analysis. But does that, I don't want to put you in the spot, but.
I'm sorry, Director Paris. Sam Powell also has a comment.
Yeah, and he can talk after I'm done. Thanks. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are that I want to recognize that I think on our end, we messed up a little bit with the wording and with not clarifying with RTS, the specific assumptions that we had. We had just copied the language from last year's application for this. If it's not approved, we would go back, change the language. I do think that Tim Marvin at Ora Vista and RTS expressed the desire to have this application move forward as soon as possible. So and it would be on Todd Groundwater's time, right? That we're taking the time to adjust this application because this was a fee-based application. But I recognize that the downside of going back and adjusting the wording for next month might put RTS Orchard in a more
let me just,
position.
we're burning a lot of time on this. Let me just try to come up with a quick solution that the board will be okay with. If it's not going to cost RTS or the Celix or anybody transferring any more money to do this, and you're going to just change the wording and do that on your own time, maybe that's the solution. I just don't want to, and we've worked really hard not to create a bureaucracy here where we just create issues so people have to spend money. And I think that has been our theme all along, and that's what we don't want to do, or I don't want to do. So if that's what you're saying, if that's the solution, we have a consensus with the board, why don't we just do that?
So you're saying make it contingent upon the change?
Or just, RTS has all this carryover water. It's not going to stop their operation. It's not going to impact them financially. And all we're going to do is make the paperwork how it needs to be. And Arden's going to do that on their own time. Let's just do that and move on and not keep burning more time.
Yeah, and I think the point that Arden that you made, I agree, Director. And I think the point that you made, Arden, just to make everybody more comfortable, is that if they did exceed what has already been approved for them to pump for that year, then that would promote the material injury analysis at that time.
That's right.
So the board would be able to consider it then.
Yeah, exactly. And we do have Stan Powell that has a question. Stan, you can unmute and ask your question, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair Paris. And I find myself in agreement with most of your comments, Chair Paris. Arden, I did want to say first, I really appreciate your working through this. And perhaps it's a mistake, probably a mistake on my part too on the advisory committee, because we've probably seen some similar words. But part of my concern is long-term that we try and stay with the definition of investment purposes, because it started to get embedded in what we do. That terminology is used in specific ways in the annual reports. It's a signal that we didn't have to do a material injury analysis. And lastly, if you're going to be burning some time of your own on this, in reviewing this, my feeling was, and I guess if I were in your shoes, the way I would try and word it, is that this is approved for use on this land, consistent with a material injury analysis, which is identical to the analysis done in whatever our prior one is. Because that analysis says, as long as your total pumping on this land is within this limit, we don't see the potential. And I don't think you should have to redo that every time. I think you should be able to just refer back to it. You know, one sentence, here's where you find it, and we're good. So that's the only comment I had. Thank you, Chair Paris.
Thank you, Stan. Good comments. And Craig, just comment on what Stan just said.
Yeah, I agree with him. I think we can do the material injury analysis at that point.
Okay, great. Right. Arden, do you have direction?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Great. And thank you for unwinding that for us. And we appreciate that. And so we're not going to prove anything on 12. We're going to put it over to the next meeting. My understanding, it's not going to cost RTS or the Celix or any of the people doing this transfer any more money. We're going to correct the paperwork. They'll come back to us. Hopefully we don't have to have this long of a discussion. You can say ditto for last meeting and we'll go on. Right?
Sounds good.
Okay, great. Thanks, Arden. We'll move on to item 13, consideration possible action on non-production applications. And that should be the Angel Show.
Oh, thank you, Rob.
Go Angel.
Okay, here I go. This month we have 2 monitoring well applications for the United States Air Force. These monitoring wells are located at Plant 42. They are asking to replace these wells because the groundwater levels fall below their respective screen intervals, and they're no longer able to pull groundwater samples from these wells. This groundwater sampling is part of their groundwater treatment system at the Air Force Plant 42, which has been in operation since 2010. And Rob, I know last night at our board meeting, you questioned the ground levels dropping. I did contact the Tom with the Air Force, and he explained to me that the last time they sampled this well was in December 2021. And they were unable to get the amount of water they needed for the sample. So these new wells will be drilled 20 feet from the existing wells, and they plan to go about 20 to 25 feet deeper for those wells.
Yeah. And Arden, have you listened to what Angel just said by chance?
Yes.
So my concern I brought up, and maybe it's no concern at all, but it just raises my anxiety when I see a request where the groundwaters have dropped in an area where they shouldn't be dropping. Is that any concern of yours, or am I just being overly anxious?
I think that this is an important thing for us to look at. The 2 things that I would like to know are, where are these wells located, and when did the water levels drop to where they couldn't be monitored anymore? So I will follow up with Angel on getting that information.
And in addition, the well construction of these individual wells and the pump placement, there might be some specific local issues with the wells that aren't necessarily a larger problem. So we can look into it more locally.
And does the board share my concerns, and are we okay with Arden taking some time to at least look into that? Okay. I don't see any reason not to approve it today. I'm just would like to get some type of report back after you take a look at it to make sure we're not missing something.
Rob, just maybe one thing to add. If we're wanting to take a look, should we be saying, hey, look at the basin, or do something broader for, instead of a, specific area? I'm just curious. I'm going to ask engineer to take a look. Is there more of a macro do we want to do?
Maybe. I think right now that's a specific area for a specific reason. If they're monitoring for the pollution right there, and that is in what basin? Central Basin. So that is our basin of most concern. And so whatever Arden thinks is necessary to alert us if she's seen a problem within that area, I would agree with that.
Yeah, so maybe just clarify sub-basin, right? Central sub-basin. Central Basin. Yeah. And then secondly, I'd say let's take a look at what's happening in the entire central sub-basin. And I think it's a good call out. And I'm guessing the engineer would need to take a broader view of that to identify what's going on specifically there.
Yeah. A lot of you, yes, stuff. Yeah. Well, Arden, take a look and report back to us. And if you think you need to spend more time on it, let us know, and then we can have that discussion then.
That sounds good. I'll update our database with the most recent USGS monitoring well data and look at the hydrographs throughout the central Antelope sub area, as well as looking at specifically the production near these monitoring wells.
Great. Is this something our model will pick up in the future or not, or?
provided that we have accurate production reporting and we in the area, we may be able to identify some declines in water levels that we don't have monitoring data for. But typically for local declines in water level, the most useful tool we have are monitoring well data.
Great. Okay. Do you have enough direction to move forward on this?
Yes, we'll make this an agenda item for the engineer report next month.
Yeah, or just put it on your engineering report next month to report back, but I don't see any reason not to move forward on this item. Board, everybody good?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for your input. And Angel, are we ready to do a motion to approve this?
Yes, please.
Okay, is there a motion to approve R2514?
I move.
Motion made by Carolina. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jared. Gotcha. Any further discussion? Any discussion online? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution R2514, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We're now on item 14, consideration possible action on replacement well application, and that's still the Angel Show.
Okay, so this month we have one replacement well application. It starts on page 288 of your agenda packet. This applicant is a known small pumper to the judgment and is requesting a replacement well because their existing well is pumping insufficient water to meet their household needs. They also expressed that they have capped their well and their existing well. It's currently not being used, and they would like to keep that well for future use if the water levels rise for emergency purposes.
Very good, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, is there a motion to approve R2515? Motion made by Kathy, second by Brandon. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. We're now on the administrator's report. Is that the Angel Show?
That is the Angel.
Oh, right. Go Angel. This is the first time you've done the administrator.
Okay. The only thing we have to report on this month is the Outlook calendar for February, March, and April. February, we have the audit field work in progress, and we expect to have the draft audit report to the board next month. We're also receiving and processing payments from invoices that were sent out in January. And just a reminder, those fixed assessments are due March 1st. We're also collecting production reports, and those are also due March 1st. In March, we plan to have the replacement water plan from the Antelope Valley State Water Contractor Association in front of the board for consideration. We also plan to continue discussions on carryover water storage agreement and discuss possible improvements to the new producer application process. And then April, just a reminder, we have the sub area management advisory. And that's all I have to report.
Great. Go ahead, Derek.
So kind of just tying the two together, the sub area basin report, and that meeting and tying it into kind of the analysis that we've asked Army to do, I think would be helpful to make sure those connect, because I think that'd be a good conversation point.
Very good comment. Can you
make sure that happens?
Make sure that happens?
I can.
Great. Anything else? Angel, I just gotta say I'm very proud of you. The leadership role you've taken on the Watermaster board and everything you do and how well you interact with the public. I'm just wanted to point that out. Thank you for your hard work and for making us all look good.
Thank you.
And that brings us to item 16, the Watermaster's engineer report. report. Arden, you're on.
Hi, thank you. So we have a very brief engineer update today. I'm just going to share our summary of new production and qualified small pumpers. Last month, we approved 2.15 acre feet of new production. And that's really our only update. I want to note that in the advisory committee report, they did discuss the need for carryover storage agreement. And we want to echo that we would like to get those conversations rolling and hope to work with council and admin on that. And so if there's any board discussion or board direction on that item, that would be great to know.
I see heads nodding.
Yes, please.
Any?
Yes, so,
Okay.
I think we'd like to hear a recommendation about when we can, how to best start that conversation and what is appropriate to bring before the board for consideration.
Everybody good with that? Yeah. I think that's our direction, Arden.
Okay, so would you like us to have sort of share our thoughts as an item in the engineer update, or work with council to develop a memorandum of some sort?
I maybe let's have a discussion with the board to help you guys direct your focus on the memorandum, maybe.
Right, and so I think maybe I'd like to hear your recommendation in terms of, and working with council and the administrator, perhaps an engineer's report might be the best place to start. But to your point, Director, ultimately our goal is to bring it so that we have a better understanding of everybody's recommendations.
Right. Currently, we were not thinking of amending the rules and regulations. We make recommendations, we can put that in a memo for the board's consideration. But I appreciate discussion on what the parameters are for its use. The memos were very positive about public input and public availability, and I don't not inclined to get into amending the rules and regulations for that. But you may feel differently. You want us to do that.
Let's just, what I would think if we get consensus is for, I think we just need to have a discussion on it, hear what your guys' thoughts are completely on it,
Okay.
and then let us give our input before, we have any memos coming to us that we send back to get changed.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Yeah. So I think that's our direction. So Arden, let's have a discussion, and that involve you and Craig and our administrator with the board and public, and then we can move on.
Right.
Excellent. Are there any questions for us? If not, that wraps up the engineer update.
Great. Good update. Any questions? Very good, Arden. I think you're going to be done. Let's move on to general counsel's report.
Yeah, there's all closed session matters.
Okay.
So
Then board members' requests for future agenda items.
I have one. Arden, are you still there?
Yes.
I spoke to Arden recently about our sub-area basin bounds, beginning bounds by sub-area basin. And I'd like to have it as an agendized item next time to have a discussion with her on that, and how to, I'm trying to get the numbers put together per sub-area basin on what the beginning bounds is.
Can you elaborate a little bit more, since I don't understand what you just said?
Let me explain it to you. In the in the central sub-area basin, when we started the adjudication, our family basically had a little over 3,000 acre-feet of water. For the adjudication, that got reduced down to 1,776 acre-feet. That was our starting bounce. So we need to understand what the bounces are in the different sub-area basins, in my opinion, to adequately analyze our material injury analysis and everything that we're doing on large transfers.
For each party?
No, for each basin.
Each basin.
The central basin, west basin, and so forth.
Now,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just get real cautious, probably because I'm in some other areas that are dealing with adjudication. So it's one basin, we're talking about sub-areas, sub-regions of that. So just, we're one basin, but I think that Brandon's point, this came up on the landowner's call, that I think is part of the judgment. They correct me if I'm wrong or we're wrong, but there was a beginning balance that needed to be set for each of the sub-areas and of what that is. So Brandon's showing you the one point, but the culmination of all those landowners in those sub-area regions needs to be set so that we think it's a key component to, material injury analysis.
but doesn't, just brainstorming with you, I'm not sure of this, but doesn't that change over time with the transfer? So you take some of your water, you transfer it to somebody that's now using it in a different sub-basin. That changes the amount in each sub-basin. And that changes each time we do, potentially each time we do a transfer. Is that?
That's why we're looking for the beginning balance.
So that's the key component, having a beginning balance that knows where, think about accounting, which engineering water is accounting. If you don't know where your starting point is, you don't know where you sit today.
So the first request of our engineer is to come up with what the beginning balance was when we got to the end of branch.
That's correct.
In each basin.
Each sub-area basin.
Sub-area basin. Thanks. Arden, do you understand that?
I do. And the challenge with this question, or what makes it a little bit less straightforward, is that there are quite a few parties that have wells in multiple sub areas. So the question really is, in the adjudication process, was that considered? And was this calculated at the beginning of the adjudication? And do we want to go back and make assumptions about how production was split up by well prior to adjudication implementation? And so there are some legal questions that come up with this. I've reached out to Craig and Cameron for a little bit of guidance, but it is a little bit less straightforward than just crunching the original production rights in the judgment and physical solution.
Understood, Craig?
Yeah, I think we need to be careful what general counsel is going to look at. We're looking at what the judgment says about sub-areas and balances, if any. I mean, the native safe yield is indicated. So when you get into what was discussed pre-trial or during trial, I get 1,000 opinions from people that are watching this, or what they think the answer to that question is. So I plan on being prepared to talk about what the final judgment has to say about sub-areas.
Okay.
And that's my request.
Okay.
Okay. We got it? So that will be an agenda item. Kathy has a question.
So where this is, so Brandon, it's in addition to this.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, so there'd be a number at the top that says beginning, and then it says current, right, as of the report, right? So you know the net.
It's putting the balance basically on this.
Yeah, the net debit and credit and what that balance is.
Okay. If that's
If it's called for an adjustment,
100%.
I just want to make sure that we're clear.
if it's within the 4 quarters.
Yeah, of course.
Well, that will be a fun discussion next month, Arden. I think, right?
I think so too.
Okay, good. Thanks for agreeing with me. And any other future requests for agenda items? No. And now that brings us to closed session. Is there a motion to go into closed session? Motion made by Kathy, seconded by Carolina. Any discussion here? Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to go into closed session, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. Why don't we meet in closed session at exactly 11:30? Perfect. Give you guys a break. You can go visit your friends. Whatever you want to do. Restroom. Okay,
Recording stopped.